Hello and welcome to Look for the Light, a podcast where we dive into the world of The Last of Us. I'm your host, Stuart Trainer, and I'm joined, as always, by someone who will almost certainly agree that the only thing worse than the infected are bureaucratic town council meetings. It's Jess Sterling. Jess, how are you doing?
It's so true, but you know what we got in bountiful plenty this episode?
Not
Jesse's
corn.
arms.
We did get Jesse's arms. Well done for making it 20 seconds before mentioning them. Fantastic. Such restraint, Jess. I did expect you to just scream the moment I started talking.
They were everywhere in the best way, and they were always flexing. What's not to love?
I'm going to give a slight spoiler for later on in the episode, not for the show at all, but just for what we'll talk about, because within our notes here, we come up with a rough outline of the episode so we know what to talk through and things. Jess's notes are unhinged. They are all caps. Jesse's effing gun bitch. Oh my god, Jesse's arms. Stop it. The 90s bangs. Sean Hunter who? Amazing.
Because Stuart so graciously edits this podcast, and so I'm always like, I will do the notes because I feel guilty. I feel it in my soul. I'm like, I need to do something, so I will take notes. And so a lot of times what ends up happening is it's very much a stream of consciousness as I'm watching, and because if I don't, basically my mentality is if I don't write it down, I won't remember to bring it up.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I just fully lose everything that's happening, and this happens. And I love Jesse's hairstyle, by the way. It very much is 90s Sean Hunter from Boy Meets World. He has the floopy things parted in the center, so floopy.
You've got to consider as well, this was 2003 is when the infection hit. So we're just coming to the end of the noughties, 2000s, early 2000s. That hairstyle's probably still prominent, but all of the media that exists that they are able to salvage are VHSs or maybe lucky with DVDs and finding power for them and stuff. So all the media probably has this hairstyle in them as the most modern thing, right? So of course it's totally coded. It has nothing to do, obviously, with the resurgence of old culture and hairstyles. It's
not like the 90s are a popular time again anyway.
Yeah,
or anything.
It's not like Gen Z just rehash everything that we've done in the past life, right?
Mm-hmm. But no, I love Jesse's arms and I love his hair, and I just love Jesse. So that's that.
Let it be known. Let it be known. Well, but we're not here to talk about Jesse's arms exclusively. We're here to talk about episode 3 of season 2. Jess, broad thoughts on the episode. Thoughts, feelings. Obviously, it's a lot slower compared to the previous episode. Previous episode was, I think, probably a milestone in TV history. How do you follow that, right? They have to slow things down.
It's kind of impossible to follow an episode like episode 2. I think level setting your expectations when it comes to television is really important. There are a lot of times where it's the episode following one of the best episodes of a series, often people find underwhelming. This one I thought was pretty good. There are certain things I would quibble with, which I'm sure we'll get into, but overall I didn't mind, because I think this is probably the episode I'd point to that is the biggest diversion from the game and some of the game's plot points. And most of the changes I was okay with because I understood what they were going for. I understand why they made the changes they made. Obviously, it's a bit of a slower episode, but I mean, I think we all kind of deserved to slow down a little bit and grieve the loss of Joel and grieve the loss of many people that died in Jackson. We kind of needed to do that before we could then set off on the road to Seattle. So overall, I would say I'm thumbs up, but not my favorite episode, obviously.
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar position. There's a lot of things to pick over. Some things that I think landed. I think there are some things that didn't land. Which I'm excited to dive into because I think that, like you say, there are choices being made in terms of what they're deviating from the games with, and I think many of them are done with a real kind of consciousness of
Yes.
really reflecting a different medium that they have to adapt to, and also telling the story at a different pace. So yeah. Well, before we dive into things fully, if you're new here, please make sure that you're subscribed. Look for light on wherever you get your podcasts. We should be submitted to all of them. And if you'd like a more visual experience with like the quotes coming along with the text and everything, then you can find our pretty faces over on YouTube at Look for Light there as well. We'd also love to hear what you think, what your thoughts on the episodes are, what your theories you might have if you're a first time watcher, and even any feedback on maybe how they're adapting things if you are someone who played the games in the past. So do reach out to us at lookforlightpodcast@gmail.com. And don't worry, we're not going to spoil anything ahead from the games or what we anticipate. We're going to focus entirely on what happens in this week's episode. But if you are looking for spoilers, then we'll flag that in our spoiler section that will come at the very end of this episode. So, unless there's any other things to cover, Jess, you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Give Sarah my love.
We open up with a harrowing shot of the infected burning outside of Jackson, and we quite rapidly go to a scene where Tommy is, I guess, shown the body of Joel, where it's being prepared for, I guess, being dealt with. This is harrowing, right, Jess? This is awful to see. But I guess a benefit of being able to like do adaptations, right?
Certainly, it's, they've said this in the official podcast for The Last of Us, and we've talked a lot about it in terms of adapting a video game to a show. You're in the action of it. And so if something's not an action scene, or you're not moving, you're not progressing, it doesn't really make sense to include that in a video game. But something like this, where Tommy isn't present when Joel dies, Tommy is busy with other things, getting to slow down and take a moment and get to see him grieving the loss of his brother is super important. And it's awful, right? Like, we see him like cleaning, and we see Joel's watch, and he's crying, and we're all crying because it's so sad. And him, oh my god, the line, Stuart, the line of "Give Sarah my love." Oh
Yeah.
my god, like, it's
It's
brutal.
It is. It's outrageous that with 4 words, so much can be conveyed. Not only in just Tommy's obvious sadness, but I think that there's a long history with Tommy and Joel. One that was very fraught. Like when they were first reunited last season,
Mhm.
like they were at odds with each other because of everything that Joel did to, in his mind, to protect Tommy and to ensure their own survival. And so that there are things that Joel has done which are awful, but Tommy still thinks, I don't know what his beliefs are in terms of like an afterlife, but he does believe that Joel is now with Sarah and is able to pass on like his love. And it just speaks so much, not only of like the amount of grief that he still holds for Sarah, how close all like those 3 were. And like I still harken back to that premiere episode and just that
Mhm.
dynamic between the 3 of them. It was lovely. But to say that maybe not everything is forgiven for what Joel did, but he does ultimately believe that Joel is a good person and will go to a nice place. I think that
Mhm.
speaks volumes about how much grief that Tommy has here for his brother, and it's done in 4 lines, which are delivered so delicately as well. Just
Mhm.
oh, it was so sad, so sad. Really sets us up for what's to come, really. We also get as well Ellie waking up, seemingly with a collapsed lung because there are tubes kind of coming out as well, and immediately the reality of the situation hits, and she just starts screaming. This was again another
Yeah.
brutal scene to show like how awful this scenario is and the realities of like having to face what's happened.
Yeah, this is like, I mean, who knows how long she's been in the hospital at this point, but she's still in it. Like, in her mind, she's still in that room watching Joel die. And
Hmm.
it's really awful just to see her screaming out to the point where she has to be sedated. It's it's really, really tough. And like, here's the thing, and it was something that we talked about last episode, and something that I was really curious to see how they would handle, is the fact that it's not just Joel's death at this point. This hospital is buzzing, which they have a hospital, by the way. It is so busy. Everyone, there's babies being born, there's people who still need to be treated because of everything that happened with the Horde attacking Jackson. So Ellie is not the only patient in this hospital. Like, there are many, many people that need treatment right now. And it's really awful to watch, specifically Ellie kind of having this outburst when she regains consciousness.
Yeah. I think it's also a really effective scene to show that this is not just Ellie that has been that has had a problem here, that is the only person affected by what's happened. Like, all of Jackson is suffering and dealing with the fallout of this massive attack. And I think as well that it dampens the effectiveness of her grief, because of course if there was a focus on Ellie's situation, then of course so much, I guess, attention, sympathy, help is going to be given towards it. Whereas this is really framing that there is almost a scarcity in the amount of grief that can go around, but also the
Mhm.
amount of help that can come about from it as well. And that's going to be a real difficulty, which is kind of setting up this episode. The sport with the vote that comes later is that, well, this isn't everyone's top priority, which is
Yeah.
horrible to say.
But still understandable. Like, it's,
Mhm.
we'll get there when we debate it, but I think it definitely makes things a little bit more interesting to have the Horde attacking at the same time as Joel's death, because you're going to have differing opinions on what the exact right thing to do is as a result.
Completely. We then get Jess's favorite scene of the entire series. We get
Mhm.
Jesse's arms as Jackson is rebuilding, obviously fixing up what's been broken, taken from them as well. And also, it looks like they're kind of like rebolstering the defenses, which I think is a very kind of key thing that needs to be done. A great bit of, I guess, slight foreshadowing in this episode, at least, is that you've got Tommy, who's now at this stage looking a little older, a little bit more tired from everything going on, whereas Jesse, the workhorse, is just sledgehammering that down and
Mhm.
is a lot stronger and a lot more effective, which probably leads to why he is a council member, which we'll find out later. This was a
Yeah.
great scene, I thought.
Yeah, we get we're 3 months later now, so they've had a little bit of time to breathe, a little bit of time to rebuild, and I think it makes so much sense for Jesse to be on the town council, right? Like, he is the next generation of leaders in this community. He already had a decent bit of responsibility in terms of being in charge of
Mhm.
patrols. So to now have him be, and he does seem like, one of my least favorite things about Jesse, and there aren't many, but one of my least favorite things about Jesse is that he does like feed into the bureaucracy a little bit. Like, he's not jaded enough for me yet, to where he can really see all the red tape is annoying and stupid. Um, but he does seem like a really good fit for that
Mhm.
specific opening that they had on the council. I thought this was a fun scene, if for no other reason, to see Jesse use a sledgehammer. That's it.
No notes. No
Mhm.
notes.
Man, I wish I could have let him off the hook for whatever it was he was talking about. I guess I'll have to let myself off the hook for that.
Well, you really are doing good. Shit. If everyone were as healthy as you, what would I do for weed and booze?
I wouldn't worry, Gail. There's still a lot of fucked up people in this town.
Yeah. But not you, though.
We talk about bureaucracy. We then get a bit of medical bureaucracy, what with Ellie having to go through the whole thing of doing a breath test to kind of show her lung capacity, and then also a bit of a psych evaluation from Gail. This is something that Gail is showing up more and more than what I expected, based on all of the kind of marketing that came out before the season. There was very much a focus on Gail having a very intense scene with Joel, and me thinking, oh, it's a one and done. Like, we'll see Catherine
Mhm.
O'Hara, she'll get her like one episode credit. She's showing up all over the place, seemingly, and having some really
Yeah.
profound conversations, which are really digging into people, which I think are really quite interesting.
I think it makes a lot of sense to have Gail as kind of this. She serves many purposes, one of which is to have Ellie pretending and to pretend against someone like Gail that I'm fine, everything is fine. She's pulling out everything she can thinks to say that is like what Gail would want to hear. Yeah, I miss him. He mattered a lot to me. So yeah, I'm upset and sad. And then it's like, oh, I don't feel wronged. I wish I could would have made him not feel that way. But I guess I can't blame myself for that either. Like it's all just so over the top, like this is what you should be saying to a therapist to get them to think you're okay. And so to have Gail be the person kind of receiving that, because it's not going to be Dina, it's not going to be Tommy, right? Like who else would Ellie be saying these things to? No one, because the only person she maybe would have is now dead, is Joel. So like you have to have someone to be there to bounce this off of, and have it be Gail, someone who sees through all of Ellie's bullshit, is perfect. Because we know, right? God, it's maybe not my favorite. I keep doing this where I'm like, this is my favorite scene, and I'm like, no, it wasn't. But it's a really good scene. When Ellie is actually leaving the hospital and she's walking down the hallway, and you just see her face shift from the mask that she had up around Gail to like vengeance. Like that is the only way I can describe it. Is like her face just morphs, and it's kind of subtle, but that's the genius of Bella Ramsey. It is incredible, and we know right then and there, yeah, she was lying. She was lying through her teeth to Gail.
Yeah, and I like the lie because it also bolsters the connection that she has with Joel. It's like the last fragment of him that she's like really clinging on to, that they share, is this secret. And before it was a secret that really drove them apart, whereas now it's something that she clings to as being a part of him, which must lead to some really conflicted emotions that are going on. The way in which the face changes when she walks out is so cool, though. Like, I completely agree. The way in which it kind of just shifts into, oh, some people are about to suffer for this. But of course, yeah. And I think it, as well, like showing that how Ellie is really effective at giving the answers that she knows people want to hear harkens back to Fedra. Like the amount, like we got it in the Riley episode in season 1 as well, with her kind of answering and going through the whole yes, I want to be the keys, I don't want to be like, it's that conversation all over again. A kid of institutions, which it's nice to know that, as I say, it's nice to know, it's nice to know that it hasn't, like Ellie hasn't changed dramatically. Like she's still who she is, and it's not a betrayal of the character like coming here and like changing her dramatically just because of her environment, which again sticks to this whole theme of just it's her nature. Yeah, I think this is a really great way of communicating this in a really kind of subtle way and just slowly layering these themes that they're really trying to slap you around the face with by the end of the episode.
You cost us time. You let them get away.
First of all, this town was wreckage and funerals for weeks. Nobody was going to go after anyone. And then it occurred to me, if you want to find someone and the only thing you know about them is where they're going to end up, maybe let them get there.
I think the thing that got me as well was Joel's house. This was seeing the amount of flowers and cards was just heartbreaking. This in the game is such a great scene. It comes immediately after the events that happen with the golf club.
Right. Yeah, worth noting that it's different in the video game, that we're taking a 3-month time jump in the show that we do not get in the video game, because Ellie isn't nearly as hurt as she is in the show. So you know, it's not, there's no hospitalization having to take place, so she's able to kind of immediately go to Joel's. So yeah, time has passed.
Yeah, and so like to be able to like get this after time and things. It was just, it's such a great one because I say, like, we can't play out every scene in video games when it comes to like the really hyper emotional stuff. Like, you don't get a scene where Tommy grieves for Joel and his dead body and stuff. But we do get this in the video game where you explore Joel's house and you get to see things about him. And this was so faithful. Like, for a game player, this was just, in a horrible way, it was delightful. If that makes any sense.
It's really, really heartbreaking. He loves a horse painting. He loves a landscape painting. That Joel
It really does.
Yeah, and I even liked the moment in Ellie's room where we see, or Ellie's former room before she moved out to the garage, right? Like, you just see the bed frame with no mattress on it, but we do get the poster of the astronaut, knowing that Ellie loves space. Like, Joel's room having that little like carving station, whittling station with an owl. Yeah,
That's a great callback to the game, like a little Easter egg. Because in the game, he's got this really prominent, quite ugly mug of an owl that he's drinking coffee from, which I guess we don't really see, or haven't seen thus far. Maybe we'll kind of see it again. But yeah, I really appreciate that. There's a lot of little Easter eggs here. One that I think we'll touch upon in the spoiler section as well. But there's, if you're eagle-eyed, there's a lot of stuff that they've thrown in here, which is really cool. But seeing the bed, or the bed frame, and there being no mattress, again, and still having things up on the walls and it not being fully cleared out, like, it's not like a very mature thing of, oh, I'm moving out, I'm going to like take everything and leave it as I found it. It almost screams of, there's been an argument and I've dragged this out to the garage and it's been left there and he hasn't gone in there since because it's too sad to. Which, again, the environmental storytelling that you get in the game is now being transferred into this show as well, just by the sets and the environments.
Yeah, and interestingly, this shoebox is left out on the bed, like, very much on purpose, right? It's a made bed, and there is a shoebox on it, and inside is Joel's watch on top. Underneath that, I couldn't quite tell if it was like a piece of his t-shirt. You would get maybe a part of his denim shirt, like some sort of fabric. Underneath that, his gun. And very notably, Ellie doesn't really care about the watch and immediately goes for the gun. And, they talked to, if you listen to the HBO official podcast for the show, you'll know, like, yes, that's very important that Ellie identifies with the gun, not the watch. The watch is Joel's link to Sarah. The gun is Joel's link to Ellie. So she takes it, puts it, in her back of her jeans, butt of her jeans, because she wants to shoot her butt off, obviously. Like, what? This is a bad decision. And I love that Dina calls it out later. Stop it. Get a holster. Grow up, Ellie. Stop it.
It's a lesson that she's been given before, and that she's reckless like this. But yeah, the taking of the revolver is such a significant choice, because she could choose to cling to a sad memory, but at least a non-violent one, at least on the in terms of like who dishes out the violence. But she chooses the revolver because that is the linkage that they have between each other, and it is a violent relationship. Like, there's no denying it. But we do get a really tender moment as she goes over to the clothes and gives the jacket like really gets in close to get a smell of it, because smells are so evocative of memories. And like, I'm sure we've all been there where you've got a whiff of something, just suddenly you're taken back to somewhere in the past. It's so strange how the mind works like that. But this is still him lingering like in smell, and so it's almost like the closest thing that she can get to him still being around. And Bella just knocks it out of the park with this.
It's so good. It's so good because it's even the way, because certainly she smells it, but like it's not like she is taking the jacket, pulling it to her face and smelling it. She's like resting her face on the jacket and like feeling the fabric. And it immediately brought me back to the specific moments where, because there aren't many of them, where we see Ellie and Joel kind of like hugging, or she's resting her head on him, right? Like after he gets stabbed on the college campus and she's like sewn up his wound, right? She lays with him. Like after he dies, she lays with him with her face on his face. Like it immediately brought me back to those moments and made me just so supremely sad because we've seen him wear that jacket. She knows he wore that jacket every single day. Like, this is, in this world, your clothing you wear until it is nothing because there's not a ton of it to go around. So I think this is kind of one of those things, almost like a 90s cartoon where it's like, oh, Doug Funny, I know, wears a green sweater vest and khaki shorts. Like, they have this is their uniform almost. And this jacket was Joel's uniform. And so I really was hoping she would take it and wear it. Maybe that's too much, but that's just what I wanted.
Yeah, it would have been a really sweet thing. But again, I think it is kind of like Ellie to afford herself like a moment of what I think she would see as perhaps weakness or vulnerability, and then to move on from it because she will have to come up and things. The jacket being so significant as well. Like, the one thing I just want to pull to is obviously after the cannibal episode with David is that it is a safety blanket that's thrown around her as well. So there is this like inherent comfort and safety that comes with it. And that longing is just conveyed in every emotion that Bella gives during this. I can't like applaud it more. Except I will, because the moment we hear Dina's voice, there is that kind of just almost feeling of scared, of vulnerability, of almost like perhaps shame as well, as she tries to mask the fact that she's upset and emotional because she can't be seen to be weak and sad like this, as she has to face Dina, and they have a very intense conversation. This was a real departure from the game that this is one of the ones that I really liked. It's strange because I do want to have more TV Maria. I think she's a much more fascinating and better fleshed out character than video game Maria. However, I like the fact that it's these two scheming and coming up with what it is and showing the different approaches that make their roles in this whole thing so important, because Dina has to be that kind of left side of the brain to Ellie's more creative side. You know what I mean?
I totally agree. I think this also, because we had the departure of who was there when Joel died, and so we swapped it to have Dina be there, to have Dina be closer to Joel than she was in the video games. It then makes sense to have her, keeping this information to herself, because she could have not only revealed it to Ellie, revealed it to Maria, revealed it to Tommy immediately, sent a group after the WLF immediately, but she knows how important it is for Ellie to be involved in that. So she bit her tongue, she kept her mouth shut until Ellie was discharged. And then she offers some cookies as a peace offering because she knows Ellie's going to be upset. And I thought this was handled so wonderfully because Ellie is, of course, very upset. You cost us time. You let them get away. And I love Dina pointing out that not only did I make like a very difficult decision, it was also the smart decision because this town was obliterated. For weeks, we had funerals and rebuilding. We wouldn't have been able to send people out at that point. No one would have been willing to go out. But now I know where they're going because I know where they're from. So they're going to get back to where they're going and we're going to hit them there. So obviously we'll talk later about the WLF being bigger than Dina and Ellie think they are. But like I say, this makes sense. Like, strategically, this is a smart play. And I felt that this was really, this did a great job of showcasing why Dina and Ellie work so well together. Because, as you said, Ellie gets shit done, but she's very chaotic about it. She doesn't formulate a plan ahead of time. She runs straight towards the danger. And another really great instance of this is in the premiere when her and Dina are scouting and you see Dina doing the counting of how many infecteds there are. Dina is the planner. So this makes perfect sense to me that Dina would have thought this all through before taking action on it, and that she was willing to have Ellie be angry with her because she knew ultimately it was the right call, it was the right decision, and that she knew Ellie would forgive her, which obviously Ellie does. I think using the cookies as this like symbolic way of showing, okay, Ellie's slowly getting over it. She takes a cookie. Okay, Ellie's getting over it a little bit more. She passes the cookies back to Dina so Dina can have a cookie. You know,
Yeah.
I thought this was perfect. And then, of course, I want to know, I was a little of two minds of the specific line, Stuart, where Ellie is ranting and raving to Dina, oh, you let them get away. You know, this is all your fault, blah, blah, blah. And then Dina says, I loved him too, you know. So I want to know your thoughts on this line because I feel a little bit of two minds of it.
I think it's entirely true. I think it's something that Dina has to remind Ellie of because there is almost like I think Ellie at times, I mean, as I'm gonna say, reminds me of a feral dog at times, and like she gets very resource guardy with her things, and I think with her people as well. And I think that Dina has to almost say, no, 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 you're not the only one grieving here. Like I went through this, and I did love the guy as well, and so I'm just as upset as you are. Of course, it's a different dynamic, but it doesn't deny my emotions here as well. Like I like the fact that when Ellie gets really confrontational about it, she's like, "You let them get away." Dina has to take a beat, like before she goes on to say, and it's a really subtle and classy thing as well because she takes a beat because she's clearly angry in that moment. Like you can see her kind of like hold back something. Like it seems like she kind of just wants to burst and go, "Well, f you. I didn't let them get away. I was fucking like I'm dealing with it in a smarter way." But also there is this thing of, I guess, just allowing Ellie, like there's almost like an affectionate for Ellie there in that because she's like, okay, I'm going to give you that one because you're hurting and hurt people, and I'm mature enough to know that that's an outburst that you're saying because you don't think about things before you talk. I'm going to show you the proper way of dealing with it. So I think that Dina, in saying that, reminding Ellie that she loved him as well, is her almost guiding Ellie a little bit. That's at least how I take it.
Yeah.
Why are you in two minds? I'm
I
curious.
think
about
that's
this.
fair. Because my initial gut instinct, like I couldn't even help it. My very first reaction was fuck off. Like like this is like Ellie's father. Like you know, and again, I'm also coming at it from obviously being more familiar with the video game in which Dina wasn't like as close with Joel as very obviously she was in the television show. Like she's much closer with him in the show than she was in the game. So I, you know, I had to remind myself they were actually very close, but I got a little annoyed, just a little annoyed. But the way you free it makes sense. Once I calmed down, probably like Ellie, I was like, okay, fine, she's right. Like we all loved Joel. Like you're not the only one. You're not the only one grieving, and she's not the only one grieving in Jackson in general, which will come up later because it is a major point of contention when it comes to what do we do now? Like, do we go after these people or not? Because we're struggling. So I think like hearing that side, like we all love Joel. I got a little heated immediately because you know can't help it. Even though I love Dina, love Dina.
It's effective writing because it makes you see things from Ellie's perspective, and you are just kind of like, well, it's us two versus the world. Like I'm gonna butcher the line if I try and say it and stuff, but it is like them two against everyone. And so of course Ellie is gonna react entirely like that. I do like the fact though that Dina asserts some almost claim to the grief and to the mission that they're on because it makes the tactical way in which Dina is thinking makes so much more sense because and it also makes it so much more personal because the way in which she says about how she describes about how if you know where they're going, maybe let them get there made me totally think that she's learning a lesson from Abby in the way in which Abby lured them to her friends and didn't fly off the handle, didn't like try to attack Joel even though she was unarmed. Like she didn't get emotional. She was methodical about it. And she could have been like they could have fled towards Jackson and dealt with the situation there and helped them if Abby had I don't know, not being forceful and been methodical and explained to them, no, let's be tactical about this. Come with me. We can get supplies and stuff. And so Dina has certainly learned a lesson. And I think it's a really raw lesson as well, because obviously she wouldn't have had that idea unless she had fallen for it as well. And so I think that it's just another great way of like feeding in that not only is she grieving, but she's also learning from this as well. And she offers something
Yeah.
that's like a great deal of insight that Ellie desperately needs, because Ellie's like, as she said, like Ellie would have been pulling tubes out, would have been crawling there. Like,
Yeah.
she needs someone to be practical about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the way Dina goes about it is really smart. She's like, okay, I remember talking to Eugene about these like groups, and so she tells her about the WLF and it means Washington Liberation Front. She draws the symbol for her, and she starts giving out names. This is who these people were, one by one by one. And of course, Ellie asks, "What about the one with the braid?" That's Abby. And the way Ellie says Abby, like, it gave big Arya Stark vibes of like her list of names, of like, this is my list of names that I will recite every night when I go to bed, and I will kill each and every one of them. Those are the vibes it gave. And it was perfect. Like, it's perfect. They both are like, okay, great. Well, this WLF sounds small enough for us to handle. Perfect. Let's go. This is it. Yeah, I think I really liked this scene because I think it showed off the reason why this duo works. And it's because Dina is very logical, very methodical. Ellie is very relentless, but also needs some sort of structure built around her to succeed. And Dina is going to provide that for her. So yeah, this scene was great.
I'm not saying you shouldn't do this. But if we're gonna put a posse together, we gotta do it right, which means taking it to Maria. Yes, it's fucking necessary. She's gonna want a council meeting, open it up to the town. Everyone who wants to get heard gets heard.
But you'll back us, right?
Of course I will.
So yeah, we then move on to telling Tommy about the WLF and obviously the mission that they want to do. And Tommy is like, about that. We gotta do a vote. What the heck?
Yeah, it's tough. I'm undecided on if I like this or not. Like, I guess if we look at it this way, right? When we look at Tommy and Joel as like a little bit kind of like a Dina and Ellie equivalent, like Tommy is more of the Dina. He and Joel is a little bit more of the Ellie, like chaos, relentless, just go, 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 go. And Tommy thinks a little bit, at least now, right? When he was younger, he was a little bit more impulsive, but it seems like he has come to, right, when he first got to Jackson, he agreed he's not going to use the radio. He's not going to contact Joel. Like, he did follow those rules. So like, he does live under a certain set of like rules, I guess. But I think it's tough because it's like, okay, you want to get this to a council vote, but what if they say no, Tommy? Are you really okay with just like letting your brother's death go unanswered and no vengeance, like nothing? He tries to say this isn't what Joel would have done, that Joel would only go fight for the living, basically. Like, he would go rescue you if you were still alive, but if someone killed you, he wouldn't go then seek revenge. Do you think this is true? Like, do you think this is an accurate read on Joel?
No, not at all. I think Joel
yeah.
would scorch the earth. And
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe more modern Joel, post like Jackson Joel, maybe there would be some tempering of the rage. But I think I think nature is nature. I don't think that no amount of delightful living conditions and a utopia scenario where things are lovely. I think if someone comes into like breaks down this wall and takes something from you, like he's gonna be full of rage, and I think he'd probably be just as bad. But he'd be Ellie and Dina combined because he would be methodical with that rage as well, as we've seen previously. I think that Tommy is perhaps being more generous to Joel's memory than what they actually would be like, if
Yeah.
I'm honest.
Yeah, because he does say, like, don't talk to me like I didn't know him. He was my brother. But honestly, the way he's speaking to me sounds more like Maria than it does Tommy. And so I guess if we want to look at it as Maria and Tommy have already had this conversation
Yeah.
and, you know, they've already kind of come to a conclusion, we could look at it that way. The other way to look at it is like, why wasn't Maria the one saying this, right? Like maybe Maria is present during this conversation and she speaks up, because I agree with you. I think if I'm going to say my biggest gripe with this episode, it is that we did not have enough Maria, because even in the video game, Maria is much more involved in the decision to go seek vengeance on the WLF, to go hunt them down. And I was a little bit upset because, like you said, TV Maria is leaps and bounds better than the game Maria. And so then I feel like she had a very quiet episode in what should have been much more Maria involved, because she's the freaking, like, I don't know if it's a president, whatever. She's like the head of the town council. Like, she not only is the head of the town council, she literally has a baby that is related to Joel. Like, Joel is her brother-in-law. Like, she has stakes here. And so I feel like having not much from her this episode was a little disappointing, when I just felt like I wanted to see that. Like, I just wanted to see her perspective more, because, and we'll get to it, when they did the town council votes, Stuart, up until the after the show stuff, I wasn't quite sure if Maria was one of the yeses. I really wasn't, because that's how little we got of her for me to understand where she stands in all of this. And I don't know. That was my biggest gripe, is like, the way Tommy's talking sounds like it's not him talking. It sounds like Maria. And so I don't know if, like, how to feel about that.
I mean, yeah, I'm in two minds with that. Like, firstly, yeah, I completely agree. The lack of Maria in this episode is, I think, for me, the biggest loss of this whole thing, because she would be a fascinating perspective, because we're getting very personal grief here of, like, obviously, look, we've lost Joel. Maria, I think, what with having quite a hostile relationship with Joel that was mending and getting a bit better, but still there was like surface level tension, what with the constructor dial or whatever it was. There was, I think, that we would get a different aspect of the grief that's on display here, is that she's grieving Jackson and grieving what they had built and what that had been lost because of this attack. And she is that pragmatism, and she should be that voice that's saying, no, we can't afford to lose 16 people to what could be potentially a death wish.
Yep.
And if on top of that, you've got a kid, buddy. Like, you've got a responsibility here. And so that's where I'm in two minds, because I think that she should be that voice that's articulating that. But I don't necessarily think that it's her words coming through Tommy. I think it's her influence. And I think Tommy is not regurgitating lines that have been fed to him, although it does seem to be very much Tommy's behavior sometimes.
Yeah.
Like with how he didn't quite realize that they were in a communist like settlement.
So ridiculous.
I think he just goes along with things without really kind of like thinking them through or understanding.
Yeah, because there is a history of Tommy being able to be influenced fairly easily. That's how he got involved in the Fireflies to begin with, right? Joel was saying, like, he wants to be this guy who believes in these causes, and he's easily influenced and he goes along with them. And I'm not trying to say he should feel one way or the other, but like, Maria is a very strong-willed person. And she was a freaking district attorney. Like, she fully is capable of changing Tommy's mind and having him see her line of thinking. It was more so I was annoyed that we didn't hear it from her, because she's also a very important, she's not just an important character in relation to Ellie and Joel and Tommy. She's an important character when it comes to Jackson. And so I felt like she is the face of Jackson, in my opinion. Like, at least one of the major faces of Jackson. And so it felt like a little bit of a disservice to the character to not hear more from her this whole episode, not just the scene.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. But I think that it's such a tough one to thread, because I think when we get to the town council meeting of it all, there's certainly a lot to dissect there in terms of like where votes sway and things,
Right.
and how that goes. And there's a very interesting dynamics that come up based on who speaks, but we will get into
Mhm.
that, I'm sure.
Tell me, you feel safer?
Yes.
Good. Understand what we're giving you now. Keep you far, far safer than a hammer. Distance.
From home.
From war.
Between that and where we are now, though, we get an introduction to a new group, a group of people walking down a trail with scars on their faces, raincoats, carrying hammers. Thoughts on this, Jess? Any immediate thoughts? Any vibes?
Yeah, without spoiling anything, a father-daughter, of course. The show loves a father-daughter relationship. Kids, as always, being very inquisitive about everything. They talk about a prophet. Well, the prophet's been dead for 10 years. It's giving cult. It's giving cult. It's giving very, very entrenched in religion. And I think, like, for me, the saddest part of this is seeing that a child has scars on her face that very much look like they were put there on purpose. Like,
Mhm.
it hurts me, Stuart. Like, the idea that someone would do this to a kid is and really, really hard to take. Everyone dressed very similarly, their hair done very similarly, and yeah, they don't have traditional weapons. They have a hammer, and they communicate in whistles, which is truly so cool. Like, in terms of world building, this is so intelligent and incredible that, like, we're going to use different combinations of like pitches of whistle to communicate things across distances, and also it's in code. People won't know what we're
Mhm.
saying. It's incredible. It's so smart. But yeah, obviously I think for show only people, we're not going to spoil anything, but like, something to take note of is this group who they talk of war, they talk of getting distance from it. So seemingly maybe they're pacifists. They don't want to engage in violence. They're trying to escape the violence, but the
Mhm.
violence is gonna come to them because they have to hide from the wolves.
Seemingly so. I'm intrigued as to the choice of where they've placed this. It certainly comes in a different order than what we get them in the game. Again, can't talk too much on it just yet. We
Yeah,
will
we'll talk
talk
about it in the
in
spoiler
depth
section.
about this in the spoiler section. But yeah, it's great confirmation that we are getting them. Is I will say at this point, but I have a fair few reservations and issues with this
Interesting. I can't
scene
wait.
in particular. I think probably my strongest bad take thus far.
Ellie, the council won't make up their mind until we hear people speak. So here's a little advice. Organize your thoughts, write them down, and then read them out loud tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, because I'm stupid.
Because you're angry, Ellie. And no one's gonna vote for angry.
Mercifully, though, we are rescued by town council bureaucracy, and the impendingness of it, as we get Ellie and Jesse training, furthering the kind of like physical development that the two of them going through in terms of like fighting styles. We saw them obviously training together, or at least Jesse maybe coaching in the sparring that they had in the barn and the opening episode as well. And this time we're seeing how strong Ellie is in terms of being able to actually pack a punch. Doing so with very limited lung capacity from having to heal. And of course, we find out that she's been doing like crunches and push ups when they've not been looking. Of course.
Is Ellie my father? Because truly it feels like Ellie is my father sometimes. This level of hard-headedness is so frustrating to like live with if it's someone you care about. Like,
Mhm.
my father he knows better than any doctor. When he had like shoulder surgery, he was like, nah, I don't need that sling. I know what I can do. I know my limits. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh my God, please, would you just listen to the person with the medical license, please? But I digress. Ellie, of course, was training while she was in the hospital, and Jesse's impressed, and of course the topic of town council gets brought up because he is now on the council, and she asks like, can I have your vote? And he plays bureaucracy with her. He's essentially like, can't talk about it, sorry, lips are sealed. And she is like aghast, like, what are you talking about? You're my friend, it's me, and also you were there, like. And he says, I know. And I think all it takes is for Jesse to say, write down your thoughts and bring them tomorrow, because right now you're angry and you need to take a second and think about what exactly you want to say to convince people. So to me, that is like the green flag of like, Jesse is on Ellie's side because he's giving her very good advice. I think he can't make any promises because I think he knows which way the council leans. I think he knows that it is going to be an uphill battle to get the votes needed to pass what she wants to pass and have people go seek vengeance on Joel's killers. I think he's aware of that, even if he is the youngest town council member. I think he's just aware of what she's up against.
Yeah, I think he's being a really good friend here in that he's not giving it to her on a platter. He's giving her some really sage advice, which is write down your thoughts, don't go to them angry, because angry isn't going to win you anything. But doesn't betray his position as well as a trusted leader of this place. Like if he goes around and breaks that, then his sense of authority, sense of like honor, is destroyed with Ellie. And so Ellie still, like, she may mock him, but I think there is a sense of maybe not admiration, but at least reverence for like Jesse's position as a slight more of an elder than what she is in this whole situation, that he is like someone to be relied upon. And that is destroyed the moment he kind of betrays that and just starts giving her information willy-nilly. So like it's absolutely essential that he does do that. But he does give her a branch and some really good advice that she would need. Doesn't help all too much though, because like you say, it's an uphill battle. Scott's rambling about corn. This Scott, I guarantee, like it's already started like festering on like forums and in comments and things. I think Scott is going to become somewhat of a cult side character because everyone is here to talk about Joel and the whole situation, and he's rambling on about corn like an absolute icon because I guarantee this is more important. This is so much more important than going after some
like,
would-be killers of Joel.
I don't know about Seattle or anything. I just want to talk about corn. Like, icon. That's really funny. I never would have thought about that as him being like any sort of a special side character. I was mostly just like, get this guy out of here. Like, who wants to hear about corn right now? Come on.
Yeah, no one does. But it's an essential thing. Like, they've got, like, this stuff is important. This, like,
yeah.
Honestly, the most boring things when it comes to, like, town council stuff tends to be the most important things that they have to talk about. Because boring stuff is, like, the day-to-day. This is spicy. This is, like, everything to do with the Joel thing. And so everyone's just chomping at the bit to, like, get on with it. And Maria's just like, all right, I'm going to wrap this up now. Get on with it. And they get to the vote. We get a very impassioned speech from a character that we've not met before, Carlisle, who talks about forgiving and forgetting, which is read by many of the room, I think, as probably the tone of what many people are kind of leaning towards, perhaps. Seth is having none of that, though. What did you think about this? Because this is, I think, a very contentious issue.
Yeah. So this is not a spoiler for anything in the video game to say that like Seth is not a big character, right? Like he makes his bigot sandwich, like he has that whole thing. That's about it.
That's it, yeah.
The show has given him more to do. He is now the voice of the opposition. prior to Ellie standing up and speaking. The problem is Seth says what Ellie would have said without any preparation, which is ineffective. Like these sons of bitches don't deserve our forgiveness. Don't call the audience idiots, Seth. Maybe don't do that. Like, maybe don't call them all stupid, okay? And like, the thing is, he's also like blatantly wrong. Like, he's, they'll come back. They'll come back because we made it too easy. It's like, well, not really, because the whole reason they came there was to kill Joel, and they got that. They succeeded, and now they left. I think what he means is that, if we show them we have weakness, more people will come and take our land and blah, blah, blah. Very xenophobic, like very not great. It's, I don't know. I don't need to hear from Seth, I think is my problem. Like, I just don't care to hear from him. I understand kind of what they were going for. I know this worked better for you than it did for me, Stuart. I just was like, God, you're hurting Ellie's point here. And like Ellie, of course, is like astonished because she hates this guy. Now she has something in common with him. Like, what the hell? And it makes you rethink, like, should I be thinking this when I'm agreeing with a guy like Seth? Like, of all people? So I was just like, Seth, shut up. Like, you're hurting the cause. Stop it. It was just, I don't know. I just can't. Like, we have enough people. You know what? We hear enough from white men in this world. I just don't always need to hear it. Like, sometimes the Seths of the world can just sit down and shut up. That's it.
See, this is, I think, precisely what they're trying to illustrate with this, is that giving Seth this position, which is similar to Ellie's being unfiltered. I mean, Neil and Craig on the official podcast said that it was purposeful. It was to kind of to combat that sometimes in life there is complexity, and that sometimes people that you're in total opposition to share the same opinion as you, and how do you grapple with that? And I think for that, it's kind of essential, because the theme that they're building upon is the whole othering of other groups. We're seeing this with this establishment of what seem to be factions. We're seeing it with the introduction of a new group, which is why I will forgive the positioning of that group being introduced where they are. That's the one thing I will probably say is that works in its benefit, because we have the WLF, we have Jackson, we have this group, and there's very much this sense of like, well, they are other to us, and therefore they are potentially the enemy. And I think that what this forces Ellie to do is it seeds in this idea that perhaps maybe others, just by virtue of being others, aren't necessarily always your enemy. Seth to Ellie is an other, but Seth shares that opinion. And I think that this is seeding in something that is going to be a very long-term theme to do with the following kind of seasons that are coming up. And there I see that as being not essential. I think it could have been tackled in a number of different ways. Seth did not have to be the vessel for it. But I do also think that it's a great way of, I guess, confronting what is, I think, a very kind of like societal kind of issue at the moment, which is that people very much are like of the opinion of you have done a wrong, which is holding bigoted opinions and articulating them in an awful manner, and therefore you are done. Like it's basically it's
Cancelled.
cancel culture,
Yeah.
cancel culture, and it's a tough one to like kind of navigate, because I am in a similar mindset to you. I'm like, Seth's an arsehole. I don't want to hear what Seth has to say, and I don't find myself agreeing with what Seth says in the entirety in this speech. I don't agree that practically, like, because I know the reality of this group, that they will then attack again because we've shown weakness. I don't necessarily think that being vulnerable once doesn't make you weak overall. You can show weakness and still be strong. It's about how you react to that. And it's very much like showing us a different opinion to this whole thing. And I think it's what I did come out of this scene with was just a sense of, I like that we are getting a broad range of opinions, and that we are getting this push and pull, because if we weren't to get that, if Seth was to be silenced and not to have that voice of just this anger, that we would only get Ellie's filtered version of it, and it would seem a bit too nice, a bit too clean, a little too wrapped up. And I think it's essential for really fleshing out the reality of this whole situation. Seth is an ugly face of society that we have to recognize, because if we just mask it, hide it, throw it away, it becomes this really filtered version of media, which is what many people are pushing against back, of just woke media. And it's not that. It's about kind of like not lending a megaphone to those opinions, and it's about kind of like just cultivating what you do see. And I think that what they did is they didn't lend a megaphone to those thoughts, but they've aired them in a way that I thought worked quite well in showing that this is a real society that does exist with problems. And that's where I kind of come across from it, but I'm thinking, I kind of think that was necessary. Do I think that it had to be through Seth? No. It could have been told a number of different ways, and could have come about it. But I appreciate the fact that they are going to that extent of bringing that involved into it. So I wasn't too down on it, at the very least. Was I happy about Seth? No. But, I mean, that's just, I think, from a normal reaction to it. But what I think that was so great is that this is something that Neil Druckmann really kind of like, because it was Craig that wrote it, I believe, and it was Neil that reacted in the podcast. And he said that he kind of got really emotional because Seth is the only one that's advocating for Joel, like, and doing that kind of evocative Joel-like reaction. And it was nice to get that in a way, even though it was completely wrong. It was nice to have someone advocating for Joel. But then you have to remind yourself, Joel does kind of deserve what he got.
It was his comeuppance. He literally killed like dozens of people. Like, and that was just that one incident, let alone like how many other innocent people has he killed? Innocent, whatever.
And
but like
the same could be argued for Abby's father as well. Abby's father was complicit in something that was taking the choice away from a young girl as to maybe she would have chosen it, but they were taking choice away from her and potentially putting her life in danger as well. She was almost certainly going to die from the procedure. So, like, perhaps there's an argument to be made that the comeuppance was deserved there. Everything is great, and this, I don't think it's in a really kind of like convoluted way in which, like, ever since Breaking Bad, everyone's like, oh, your bad guys have to have, like, a lot of complexities, everything's morally great.
Anti-hero,
I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. But it is showing that there is complexity in the world, and I appreciate that. And really simple, kind of like spoon-fed stories. I'm like, I don't want to be spoon-fed a story. I want to be able to like think about it. I want to have these discussions on whether the morality is right or wrong to include it. Otherwise, I mean, it's boring. Like, TV is boring as enough as it is sometimes. Like, I'm not here on autopilot. I want to engage with it.
I mean, but we get to Ellie's speech, which is so interesting because
so interesting.
It is so fake. It is so fake. The amount of times that Ellie says it's not about revenge. It's not. I want justice.
Sure, Jan.
And she really tries. Like, it's very political, the entire speech, because everyone else out in the world are strangers, but we're not strangers to each other. Like, and I don't want to be. I want to protect us, and we should be protecting each other. So do this for us, right? Like, she even, I'm trying to remember exactly what she says, but she also like calls out directly to Maria with something about like her former life as a DA. Like, all of this, it's all just so fake. Like, it's to a person who doesn't really know Ellie, it could come off as sincere, I suppose. But for us and for Gail and for maybe some others, we could all just see that Ellie is doing her best to say whatever she can to get people to agree to this, and then she'll get her vengeance. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I liked the choice. I'm not trying to poo-poo the choice. It's more so that, like, yeah, this is so obviously fake from Ellie, and Gail knows it, and I'm sure a lot of other people know it too.
Yeah, that look from Gail was something. Like, it was so great to get that twice in one episode of just, oh, all right, she's saying what she has to say, and getting through it.
Yeah.
I thought the appeal to obviously Maria's past was so sneaky. And I
Mhm.
think perhaps if Maria was on the fence, as we've probably implied based on the conversations that like had before, maybe she was she was a no vote. I think that certainly would have swayed things dramatically. So when it comes to the actual vote itself, only 3 were for it.
Mhm.
Do you take those 3 to be Tommy, Maria, and Jesse? Or do you
If
think one of them
not,
voted
then
no?
what the show would need to explain some stuff if it wasn't those 3 specific people. Tommy and Jesse for me are the easy yeses because
Mhm,
they, without saying it, kind of said to Ellie that she had their vote, right? Um Maria is the one that is a little bit questionable because, like we said before, when Tommy's speaking to Ellie, it sounds like what Maria would say. We know Maria is kind of the head of Jackson. Like, she has the entire community to look out for, not just Joel and vengeance on Joel. So I could see her leaning either way. But given the fact that we pretty much don't know anybody else who's on council, I feel like we should have seen, like, okay, while Ellie is speaking or while Seth is speaking, one of them nodding vigorously. Like, right? Like, there had to be
mhm.
some sort of a cue for us to assume it was anybody but Tommy, Jesse, and Maria. And then obviously I think was it in the after the show, the behind the scenes stuff, that the actor who plays Maria was talking about why she would say yes. So that was the only reason why I was like, oh,
Yeah,
okay, so maybe she, Rutina Wesley is the name of the actor, sorry. Um,
yeah,
maybe she did. Maybe she said yes. It just, again, this is where I got a little annoyed because I'm like, I should know definitively how
yeah.
Maria felt, and I don't know, and it's upsetting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree there. Like, I for someone who like Jackson is Maria, like this seems like such a strange choice not to include and to have that dynamic of like that push and pull. Like I applaud the complexities of showing that kind of like the morality here, but like let's show the complexities of having like two mistresses almost. One which is that kind of like sense for justice and a sense for righting what is wrong, and also protecting what you're building and choosing to like turn the other cheek. It's yeah, it's another miss, and quite a few that have built up this episode. Sadly, I
And all
think.
surrounding Maria, who's like an incredible character. They've hired an incredible actor to play her. And it's like, I want to see more of her. I know she can do it. We've seen great scenes with her previously. What the heck? Like, do we
Mhm.
not remember that's fucking purple? Like the whole like Maria Ellie like haircut scene? Come on, like give her stuff to do. It just I don't know. It gets more under my skin the more I think
Turns out nurture can only do this much. The rest is nature. If she's on a path, it's not one that Joel put her on. Yeah. No, I think they were walking side by side from the very start. Tommy, I get it. You inherited her, and you want to keep her out of trouble. Take it from a psychotherapist of 40 years. Some people just can't be saved.
Someone that the show does seem to find a lot of time for, though, is Gail. We get
Mhm.
another scene with Gail having a chat with Tommy. I love how American media wants to show that things are returning to normal with the use of kids playing baseball. It's such a funny trope to me.
It
I
is, yeah.
like it was in Interstellar. They're traveling through space and they're playing baseball to show that things are normal and that life has gone back to being good. And they do exactly the same here, is to show that Jackson's healing. The kids are out there with their Like they're hastily written on numbers on the back of their shirts and things, and they share a beer and talk about nature and nurture. Gail's a vibe. I think we can all agree.
Oh, yeah. I don't care if she's working for you or not, we can all agree she's an icon, that she is just chilling in her little sun hat, drinking a beer, probably a little high, as she likes to say. And I love how she's just lamenting the fact that there's not another therapist for her to talk to. So instead, she's an alcoholic and smokes as much weed as she can. Like, yeah, I get it, right? Like, that makes sense to me. Tommy with just like no subtlety at all. Gail knows he wants to talk about Ellie. Tommy's worried she'll do something stupid. And I just love Gail not mincing words at all, either because she's drunk or high or because she don't have time for that anymore. Like, yeah, I'm a therapist. I'm a therapist in a post-apocalyptic world. Like, there are no laws for me. You know, no one's going to pull my certification away. I could say whatever I want. And she says, Ellie is a liar. That one is a liar. And I just love that Gail sees this in Ellie because, again, the only other potential option to really, really see Ellie is Joel. And I don't think Tommy and Maria fully have the pulse on Ellie like Gail does here. Maybe Maria. I wouldn't know because I haven't seen her. But, sorry. But Tommy saying like that he's afraid that she's on the same path that Joel was on is so interesting. And I loved Gail saying, if Ellie's on that path, it isn't one Joel put her on. They were walking side by side from the beginning.
It's
that line.
Such a good line. It's such a great read because it's 100% true. Like, the reason why, like, Joel had 20 years to deal with the fallout of Sarah. He found a kindred spirit in Tess. That wasn't it. That wasn't enough. He had to find someone who was almost like a soulmate, not in a romantic way, but like someone who is just like a kindred spirit. And that one was Ellie. They are two people who are cut from the same cloth. They are absolutely the same person. And yeah, Gail sees it so clearly. And yet Tommy is perhaps blinded by his own hope and optimism of just maybe I hope that she's not going down that route. Nah, buddy. Nah. She always has been.
Yeah. There was no stopping it, right? Like, it was way too far gone by the time Tommy met her. Like, there was no way he was stopping her from going down that path. And like you said earlier, like Gail says here, like, nurture can only do a little. The rest is nature. And she says, I know you feel a certain way. You feel guilty. You feel whatever about Ellie, but you inherited her. Like, this is not something you could have stopped, and you can't stop it now. And this line is like both heartbreaking and like so real when she says some people can't be saved. Like, and that is true in a multitude of ways, right? Like, there are certain points someone's bitten, they can't be saved, right? They hand the gun over and they get shot in the face. Like, some people can't be saved from hurting themselves. You know, like, there are so many ways in which this line is applicable, and it's harsh, but it's true. It's true. It's true. Unfortunately, it's true.
Sadly, it is. I think that this reality is so necessary. And at first, I was a little kind of perturbed. I was like, "Oh, we're getting more Gail." Like, I feel like because of Catherine O'Hara, we're getting it shoehorned in a little bit. And I think perhaps maybe there is an aspect of that going on. But then we get to lines like that, and I'm like, well, I see why. I see why
we need her. We need her. Like, there are times when sometimes I know it feels like spoon feeding in terms of like the themes and like how we're supposed to feel, right? Like, it's better to not be exactly told how we're supposed to feel, but to have a character who's able to see through the bullshit and just have more of an objective lay of the land It's really important. And so I'm loving Gail. I don't know what the general public's consensus is on Gail, specifically from like video game people, where it's like, well, she's not in the video games. Blah, 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 blah. I'm finding her to be very important to the show, and I'm loving what she's providing, because I also just love her reading Ellie for filth. She's just like, oh, she's a liar. It's like, yeah, Gail. Yeah, she is. Even though I love Ellie, but still, it's great.
Call her out. Call her out.
Yeah.
We then get Ellie and Dina setting off. Town council vote or not, they're doing it, whether it's 16 or just the two of them. And of course, this isn't a plan that the two of them have concocted. Ellie was going to do it on her own, and then Dina turns up with the actual plan, because of course Ellie's packing is just guns. She's going full Curtis and Viper. She's not thinking about long term. Dina, on the other hand, comes with a list, comes with a route, and has everything sorted on that front. Again, showing how these two, as a duo, are, when they're together, it works great. And finally, we get through to Ellie, and the Converse are gone.
Such a terrible idea. I used to wear Converse when I was, 18-ish, actually around Ellie's age. I wore them. I worked in the food service industry, and I wore them to work one day as my shoes, and my dogs were barking by the end of an 8-hour shift.
Mhm.
You feel every rock, every twig, every root you step on, you're feeling them in your soul, and I don't just mean on the bottom of your feet. It's gonna hurt, Ellie, okay? Wear boots. Be practical. What are you doing? She needs Dina. She needs her.
She absolutely does. We get them sneaking out. We find out that Seth has been kind of thrown into this a bit more, and seems to be the one that is, because of his impassioned speech, is the one that's helping them sneak out. Forces a trade of giving Ellie a decent rifle, one that's not as bulky and a bit more streamlined with a scope on it. And they head out after having a kind of awkward handshake, almost like a mutual acceptance that on this they agree, but perhaps on everything else they don't. And they get going, making their way out, and we get something that broke me completely. We get Joel's grave, and Ellie puts down coffee beans.
Yeah,
How
'cause she
sweet
loved
is that? How
coffee and she
sweet
hated
is it?
coffee. And like these are valuable resources. Let's keep it real, right? Like this is
Yeah.
not like coffee is hard to come by, and not saying she shouldn't have taken the beans. I'm just saying like this is a useful resource you're putting on someone's grave, and that just shows how meaningful it is. Yeah, I want to know, because obviously they did explain it in the podcast, in the HBO official podcast. They explained the reason for having the graveyard 10 miles south of Jackson, right? Like, we don't want to pass our dead every single day. Like, we want to, use the resources within the wall for living people. Also, it's very beautiful, on and on and on. How did this work for you? Like, the fact that they have to go 10 miles away to visit the gravesite of any number of people that died during not only just Joel, but anybody who died in the attack on Jackson.
Yeah, I'm quite unemotional when it comes to graves. I'm not a grave visitor. I'm very much of the maybe not the belief that like when someone's gone, they're gone. Like you have a service and remember. I'm like, I don't see how a grave necessarily informs my attachment to someone. So I can see a benefit in having it far, far away, because a constant reminder of what you've lost being around in a place that's meant to be for living and for hope, I don't think is necessarily a good thing. But for those who do pull apart, maybe having a bit more local might be good, because it does inform remembrance, not only in people, but also of lessons learned. Like Joel's gravestone should be a marker for people not to live a life as Joel did, and to perhaps love fiercely, but perhaps not quite that fiercely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's for me, I'm not too perturbed by it. What about you?
Okay, so I'm I am of the same mindset as you, where I'm not really big on like grave markers and like needing to have a place to go to grieve the dead, right? Like I don't
Mhm.
necessarily need that, but I do know some people do. And
Yeah.
so I personally, while I understand again the logistics, the pragmatism, and keeping the space inside the walls for the living, like, you know, logically you want to save space because you're trying to bring in refugees, or you're trying to find space for refugees. It's
Mhm.
not going to help to have a whole graveyard there. But I do think 10 miles outside the wall when you don't have cars, like when you're riding horses, is a long way to go. Like,
It
I
is.
just think when if I lost somebody and I was someone who would want to visit a grave, would want to pay tribute, would want to like visit routinely, it's a really long way to go, even if it is beautiful. I probably would have been like a mile outside the wall. You know, like that's freaking
Yeah.
Wyoming. Everywhere is beautiful. Like, why do we need to
I
go 10 miles away?
I wonder if this is the show's issue with distance and not quite appreciating or maybe overestimating the kind of sense of distance, because famously in the first season, what was it, 10 miles out of Boston, and it was like seemingly this lovely
Yeah,
forestry
middle of
woodlands, and
the woods.
everyone from Boston was like,
Where is
the
that?
hell? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. No way.
Yeah.
I get it. Maybe it's like they overdid it. Like a mile, 2 miles probably would have been sufficient.
Yeah.
Perhaps I don't know. In terms of the site choice, I mean, it was stunning.
Yeah,
Very
the way it
evocative
was
of
shot was
something.
beautiful.
Yeah, very evocative of something video gamey, I will say, with that sunset, which again we'll touch upon. So yeah, I am in. This is, I think, a part where you have to put TV viewer head on and just be like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe not everything
It's
has
such
to
a
be
stupid thing to
analyzed.
quibble with, but I was like, 10 miles? Jesus. Like, it's just
Yeah,
a long way
it is.
to go. So, yeah, but it was the scene was really lovely. And like
Yeah,
just watching Ellie just like reach down and touch the ground, and like again, everyone's a little different in their beliefs and like how they grieve, where they grieve, whatever, but like yeah, I mean, and also for the parallel people out there, we got that Abby visiting her father's gravestone, and now we have Ellie
placing
visiting.
something down as
Yep,
well. Yeah.
exactly. So just worth mentioning that. But then, oh my god, we get the montage, baby. I love, as someone who loves the 90s, I love a montage.
We
Love it.
I get again another issue with people quibbling over distance. A lot of people discourse online talking about this and saying that they felt as if they had traveled to Seattle in the weekend. I'm sorry, people, but if you're shown a montage, it's as much time that was necessary to show. Like,
Yes.
if you give them a montage and you're told, oh, well, they traveled this distance, then they traveled that distance. Like, I
Right.
don't care if you didn't see every single day or the sun changing X amount of times to convey months had passed and stuff like that. They
Mhm.
traveled there. So, like, get over yourselves.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we did get a bit of a yada yada with this. You get it in the game as well, where you kind of like get a short bit on horseback, and then you arrive at Seattle.
Okay. I mean, whatever, you were super high. And you were drunk.
Right, so it doesn't mean anything if that's what you're asking.
No, I know that. My question is, how would you rate it?
Scale of 1.
But we did get a little bit more than what the game offers. We
Mhm.
get them chatting on the route a little bit. We get them playing silly games, that trying to deal with the monotony of
Yeah. Do you
a
do this
long
when you
distance.
travel long distances? Do you do games? You rotate?
I am an instigator of the games. No one else ever takes the bait. They get annoyed.
You need new
I don't know.
friends. It's not
I
okay.
absolutely do. I absolutely do. Well, if it's whenever we go on road trips, it's like usually 4 people that we go on road trips. I'm always the driver.
Okay.
Then I have my friend Tom, who's normally in the front. He's like the
Navigator.
designated DJ. And then we have my friend Alicia, who's probably the most like close to do the games and stuff. But then Benj will always fall asleep in the back because he's a little shit. And if he's listening
That's
to
when you
this,
draw on his
which he
face with a
won't
Sharpie
be,
marker.
well, that's when we need to mess with him. But yes, out of those, very few take up the games, which is
Rude.
awful because I mean, like
Rude.
travel games are the best games.
What
right?
else are we doing? You know, we're just
Mhm.
hanging out. Like, because sometimes it's like, oh, because me and my husband are big on games, and so like a lot of the time it's like if we're both caught up on podcasts, or maybe I've listened to a podcast he hasn't listened to yet. You know, neither of us have any podcasts to listen to. Sometimes we'll put on music. Most of the time we play 20 questions. That's our favorite one to play. And sometimes we do themed 20 questions. So it's like I'm thinking of a Survivor player. And so then the person has to like ask them. We spent so much time on our big cruise we took playing 20 questions.
Wow.
In an inordinate amount of time, because there'd be times where it's like, oh, we'd want to go do trivia on the cruise, but we'd be waiting there for like, 15 minutes. It starts, okay, let's do some 20 questions while we wait. Like that's what we would do when you don't have internet. Like, what are you going to do? Play 20 questions. So I did love their game. I think it seemed like it was who's the best artist you can name that starts with this letter of the alphabet. So F for Fleetwood Mac, G for Green Day, O Ozzy Osbourne, LMNOP. There wasn't any after that, but this is a great game. I'm all for this game.
Yeah, completely. Although Fleetwood was the right answer, I will just say, like,
over Frank Zappa. Come on now.
Yeah. But we get them stopping down for the night, getting caught in the rain, which apparently is like, I'm guessing this is a common thing in Seattle, is that the rain comes on real quick, because
it never stops raining in Seattle. It's always hazy. Always
amazing.
drizzly.
I love it. I need to go.
Yeah.
But then we get a conversation between them, of just maybe a little bit of flirting, maybe a little something that's like starting to take root a little bit.
Yeah.
What's your feelings on this, Jess?
So it is in the video game. It's in a different place in the video game. It's this whole thing has been kind of chunked up a little bit. But the rate the kiss moment with Dina, right? Where it's, oh, you were high. It's like, yeah, and you were drunk. Blah, blah, blah. Like there's a little bit of flirtiness happening. The thing that's interesting is that not only does Dina say, I'm not gay, which is very intriguing. But like,
please.
it's like, that's not flirting with her, Dina. That's not flirting. But yeah, I did love one of my favorite lines of the whole episode, and it's so stupid, but it really was when Ellie says that their kiss was a 6 out of 10, and Dina just turns around and goes, "Fuck you, 6." Like it's perfect. It's perfect. No notes. And yeah, it turns out because they're talking about Jesse, and Ellie says, "You can go back to Jesse." And Dina says, I already have. And it's like, that's interesting to know as well. Because again, remember, we have a 3-month time jump.
Yeah.
So like, okay, interesting. And then we kind of divert a little bit because remind me, Stuart, was the whole talking about Jesse's sadness, was that in the video game?
I want to say it is, but not as direct as this. I think maybe it's like the odd throwaway comment. I get the vibe that I'm not recalling any specific conversation that talks about this. It might be one of those kind of like throwaway lines as you start a new kind of scene and you're like exploring an area and they have like background conversations. Maybe that. But yeah, to directly address it the way they do was.
They're just like, Jesse is a sad boy.
He really is. He really is.
Yeah.
He's a serious sad boy with massive arms. Like, it's just who he is.
Yeah. And Dina saying that she hopes that's just who he is because otherwise it's her is so sad. Because Dina is literally like a light. She brings light and joy to everyone. And so like for her to even be considering that, it was just like really sad for me. Oh.
I really love the way in which Dina is very different in the TV show than the game. Like in the game, she's a bit like she's still very like joyful. She's still very kind of like open, very kind of like extroverted. But this Dina is like crank that dial up. But is also very self-aware. And clearly very much in her head as to like, well, I'm living my truth. Like I'm going to be very much an in the moment person. Like she said that she's not gay and yet she's kissing Ellie. Like it feels like she's very much, she goes along with what feels right in any kind of given time. And so she's conscious of that, but she's not willing to portray that. She's just willing to like kind of like, well, is that me or is it just his nature? And
Mhm.
yeah, a great way of adding a bit of nuance to Dina as a character and to like flesh her out. And yeah, fuck you, Six. It's such a great line. Like,
That is
I
rude.
can
If
imagine-
someone gave me a
it's
6
so
out of 10 on a kiss, get out of here. That's awful. That's barely above average. Like at least a 7. 7 is the lowest you can go without being offensive.
I mean, I think anything less than a 10, and I'm like, well, someone's clearly gaslighting me.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. The vibes quickly change though as we get closer to Seattle and we find that the group that we had the flashback to have been slaughtered by many different caliber of bullets. The stench makes Dina throw up. This is showing the brutality and that Seattle is not a safe place in the slightest.
Mhm.
Yeah, short-lived little group that we were introduced to. I'm sure
Yeah.
we'll never see anything of them in the future.
The brutality is like it's a dead kid, you know? Like it's different. And as Ellie points out, one guy was running away. Like he
Mhm.
wasn't trying to confront the attackers. They were running away. It's awful. And like of course, Ellie really hitting it home. If Abby and her crew did this to people, to kids, like she, Dina's on your side, Ellie. You don't need to convince Dina. Like Dina is there with you. But yeah, Dina just pauses for a second and yeah, let's go. Like it's not great. All these people just completely decimated with guns. Again, very militia versus almost pacifism in a way. Yeah, very interesting fight between the scars and the wolves.
Indeed. And then we get them arriving to Seattle from the south, as apparently everyone's really irate that they didn't approach from the north, despite saying that they were going to go to the north, as if routes don't deviate based on the circumstances that they encounter. Honestly, the internet infuriates me sometimes. And we see that up top, high up in the sky, Manny is on watch with a bitch scar on his head and is keeping a lookout and radioing down to what is a big patrol, big movement of WLF soldiers, and there are shed loads of them. And they have quite clearly bitten off more than they can chew, and they are totally unaware of this.
It's quiet. Too quiet.
Too quiet.
Yeah, Manny is up in the Space Needle keeping watch, which is pretty darn cool. Little Seattle landmark there. God, seeing the tanks and the militia, they're all marching like they're in the freaking army. Terrifying to go up against that as 2 teenagers with a couple of guns. Not great. Pew pew, not great. I did love the callback of the Ellie saying, "Oh, I was just trying to be a badass," and she's, "You don't need to try." So cute.
Yeah. So cute. And we end the episode there with probably setting up the remainder of the season where we are dealing with this pursuit of Abby and her crew by Dina and Ellie. And we see the mammoth task that they have on their hands of not only infiltrating this complex city that doesn't have Fedra, but it has the WLF, and it also has other groups like the Scars as well. And we realize that we've got now 4 more episodes of some quite serious stuff coming up. And that is it for this week.
Yeah.
Thoughts, Jess? Overall,
I mean, I think it's a pretty, again, nothing that followed that last episode was going to feel like enough. This is very much a stepping stone episode. We had to grieve Joel and get to Seattle. And to accomplish that all in one episode is a pretty decent feat, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not mad at it. They changed some stuff from the video game. There's a lot to talk about in the spoiler section for what they set up. Overall, I'm fairly happy with it. I think my biggest gripe is what I said before. We didn't get enough Maria for my taste. And the fact that we had 2 more scenes with Seth than we needed and like no Maria was kind of a little bit offensive to me. But overall, I like what they set up. And I'm really excited to kick things off next episode because we're getting into it.
Yeah, we
Again.
really are. I love the fact that you refer to it as a stepping stone episode and not a filler episode, as many people are calling this. I definitely don't think that it's filler. This is a necessary moment to breathe after a very intense scene, and also to set up a hell of a lot of stuff that we've got coming up, and they do so very, very well. Couple of like clunky moments, certainly not the cleanest or the best episode, but certainly a necessary episode.
Yeah.
So, oh gosh. So I think that brings us to the end of our spoiler-free discussion. So if you're heading out at this stage, thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed the episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, dropping us a comment, giving it a like if it's on YouTube. We really do want to hear from all of you what you think, and stuff like that really does help us out massively. If you are still here, though, and you're looking to dig a little deeper, as we are, because there's a lot to dig into, this is where we're going to get into the story with the full context of trailers of the games. So spoilers from here on out. Where do we start?
So I wanna talk first about Ellie saying to Gail that she wishes she had talked to Joel on the porch that night. Because this is a blatant lie, right? Like, we saw
Big
the
lie.
guitar in her room. It has to be a blatant lie.
Big lie. I was a little jarred by this. I thought maybe it's an unnecessary lie to the audience, a setting up of
Yeah.
expectations a bit bad. Craig Mason, I think it was Craig, was like saying that you should see it to be a lie. I don't think everyone will.
I definitely don't think. I think he's trusting the audience a little too much there.
Yeah, and I think that there is possibly going to be some pushback to that when it does happen. Much like in the way of the false trailer from Naughty Dog. So when they first released the trailer for part 2, they showed Joel being in the Jesse spot after Hillcrest, and so I think we might be setting that up, but for the TV viewers, which I'm not looking forward to. So I hope that they kind of finesse that a little bit, perhaps with some stuff that they got coming up. I'd like to put some trust in them with it, but yeah, certainly red flags were going off.
I was like, hold on.
I was like, oh,
Yeah. But
Bit of a dodgy one.
the biggest change I think that we should talk about is the fact that they really have messed around with Tommy and his storyline. In that, in the video game, in case people haven't played in a minute, Tommy goes first. Tommy is the one kind of pushing. He's the one who's giving Ellie this information about the WLF, about who they are. He leaves first to go to Seattle. He takes a horse and he fights with Maria, and then he gets out of Dodge. Now, obviously, in the show, they've changed things a bit. Stuart, we talked a lot about this in the coverage leading up to season 2 and saying they gave Tommy a kid, which means they can't just have him leave town because that seems like a really bad idea. So how are they going to do this? So what do you think their plan is? Is he going to follow Ellie and Dina?
I think he is. I think they finesse this quite well because the whole kid introduced such a problem for them in that no one could envisage a scenario where Tommy would ever leave. Now, with Tommy inheriting a kid from Joel, effectively, it's like he has to go and rescue his own kid.
True.
And so I think that they've done this quite smart because it also means, I think, that Jesse is going to go with Tommy, which makes more sense because they're traveling together, they're traveling safely. And so it's going to be those two going in pursuit of them, which sets things up.
Right.
I think it also sets up potentially, if I'm right, that is, because I could be completely wrong, have been wrong previously. I think I originally said that episode 3 would be the Eugene episode, which we still haven't got. We got his
It doesn't
wife
look like
in
we're getting it
truckloads.
next week. Yeah.
No. So yeah, I think that they're setting up for Tommy and Jesse to go in pursuit of them. I don't know how they're going to resolve the whole Ellie going after Abby and Jesse, like, and them two having that conflict. We've seen a shot that shows them emerging and looking over. It's very reminiscent of when they see the boat and Jesse and Ellie have that disagreement over which path to take. I think we're definitely getting that, which makes me think that at some point Jesse and Tommy get split up, and then they have to then. That's how we're going to get things back on into alignment with the video game.
That would make sense.
That's going to how that's going to work.
Because in the video game, it's more so Tommy leaves on his own to go to Seattle. Then Dina and Ellie, with permission and a little bit of help from Maria, leave to go follow Tommy. Then we think they've found Tommy. Turns out it's Jesse who's out there on his own. I do think it makes more sense. I think these characters are a little bit. They would go together, Tommy and Jesse. So that would track for me that he would then follow them. And if I'm being generous to the show, then possibly we're getting more Maria when it comes to the decision for Tommy to leave and follow Ellie. Hopefully we get some sort of a conversation between the two of them about it. I'm so sorry. I just really like Maria, and I'm very annoyed that like she's such a huge part of this. Like she should be a huge part of this.
Yeah, I don't think we will. I've got a feeling that they're gonna keep that, and it's gonna be a surprise. I think that they're gonna up the stakes and then have them turn up almost maybe in a Deus Ex Machina kind of like situation of just kind of rescuing. I hope that they don't. I hope that they do layer some things, at least give some hints towards it at the very least. But yeah, I think the reason why we didn't get much Maria is that Maria isn't central to the plot going forward.
She
I think
should
that's
be.
possibly why.
Why is Seth more important than Maria to Jackson? He's not.
I've covered that, at least my perspective.
I said my piece. But yeah, I do think there's because we said this was like one of the biggest, not concerns, but like we were like, how are they going to do this? How are they going to deal with the whole Tommy having a kid situation? So very intriguing to see. He is not the pusher. He's not the driver when it comes to getting to Seattle like he was in the video game. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad choice, because he has a lot of priorities. And I think, again, if he was talking to Maria about this, I think she would be able to convince him of her side of, her point of view. So
this is the thing with the town council vote. If we're right in our assumption that it's Jesse, Tommy, and Maria, maybe there is that Maria's like agreeing, like she's like, go get them. Like maybe she does give them like enthusiastic consent with that. There's also something like I really want to touch on mildly is that we in the trailers, I'm fairly sure that there was a shot of people on horseback and one of them had braids, and I remember talking about this and saying that it was Maria on the horseback.
We thought it was Maria.
I wonder if there's even a world where all three of them go after them.
What about the kids, Stuart?
That's where it goes bonkers for me.
They're not leaving that kid behind. Absolutely not.
But I mean,
this is some Son and Jin bullshit. Not happening. No.
It really is. It really is some Son and Jin bullshit. But yeah, that shot is out there. Maybe it's one that was left on the cutting room floor. Maybe there was something else going on with the whole kind of like.
There could be other reasons they're leaving situation. Jackson. Yeah,
exactly. It could have been them going to meet Jesse and that as they were walking back in, and it's just a shot that was left on. But there is that out there, so I'm flagging that so that if it does happen, I look like a genius for having.
And I will call it out for being Son and Jin bullshit because it is.
Exactly. Yeah. So, one of the nicest touches though that I loved is that we talked about the kind of the Easter eggs that were in Ellie's room. The hat from the museum is there, which we know the museum is happening. We don't know if the hat situation is happening.
Don't do the hat bit, Stuart.
Notice that there's only one hat. So I certainly hope that one is on Joel's head and it gets put onto a T-Rex's head or a Stegosaurus's head.
It was one of my favorite things from the second game. Like truly one of my absolute favorite things was getting to put this hat on all the dinosaur skeletons. It sounds so stupid, and it kind of is, but it was just joyous, and there's not a ton of joy in these games. So take my moments when I can.
There really isn't. Another joyous situation. Dina's pregnant, if you didn't know.
Okay, joyous for who? Yeah, this is so funny because when I played the video game, Dina does throw up at one point. A dead horse or something they see. It's not
Yeah,
the
it's
scars,
Tommy's
the Sarah fight.
horse. Yeah, when he arrives.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's when she throws up, and immediately I was like, "Is she pregnant? Is she pregnant?"
Yep, you called
Anytime a
it.
woman's thrown on TV.
The best thing about watching your playthroughs is that we got like your recorded like predictions, hot, cold takes, everything, and you nailed that immediately. And I was like, in the chat, just
anytime
like,
a woman
"Fine."
throws up on TV, she's pregnant, okay? That's just how media works. And so we get Dina throwing up here. But the thing I want to point out is when Ellie says, "Oh, if Abby and her crew did this to people, to kids," Dina has this like look on her face because she goes, "Yeah." And then there's like big old pause, a pregnant pause, if you will. And she goes, "Let's go." And I'm like, is this her realizing she's pregnant? Is this her doing the mental math and being like, haven't had my period in a while? Like, is that? Because it could be. And maybe this is me just looking for things, right? But like, also, this is why, because we didn't have the jump in time in the video game and we do in the show, we had to have Dina say that she went back to Jesse, because otherwise she would have been much more pregnant. You know what I mean? Like if it was pre the 3 months, she would have been 3 months pregnant, 4 months pregnant, whatever. So she has to go back to Jesse just for the pregnancy storyline to even make sense as well.
Yeah, because this was an issue I had with the last couple of episodes, is that we never got the scene where Owen tells Abby about Mel being pregnant.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, does that mean that Mel's getting cut out from that? What's going to be that big moment that makes Ellie see the light in terms of like how horrible her actions are? What's going to be the thing that shocks her out of this cycle of violence? And for it not to be a pregnancy, I was like, oh, I wonder how they're going to like do that, knowing full well that the Dina pregnancy was still being kept in based on the rumors that we had had. And so this still opens up that, because there's a 3-month time skip. A lot happens in 3 months. And it's possible that the pair of them are going to be, maybe Mel's a bit further along. Maybe because like they maybe don't tell Abby because it's the first 3 months. So maybe Mel,
and she could hide it pretty easily early on. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially bulky winter clothes.
Exactly. Yeah. So perhaps when we do see Mel next, she will be showing, and thus that will kind of be confirmed. But yeah, brutal to know that this is being included, but reassuring that we're not losing our minds.
I mean, yeah, no, I was like, I'm happy to see that they're adapting that part of it, but also just like it, I feel awful for Dina, who is a 19-year-old woman in a very dangerous, scary world, who is now pregnant and traveling in a very dangerous situation, like actively moving towards danger. Like it's a really, really scary thing to be in, let alone for like one of my faves to be in. I just only want good things for Dina. It's very scary. And I'm interested. I'll be interested to know or to see if in a future episode we do get a callback to this being like the moment Dina realizes, because obviously in the game she says like, oh, I realized I took a test, blah, 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 whenever. So yeah, scary for Dina. But Stuart, I want you to be able to say your piece on the Sarah fights being in this episode.
I hate
why
it.
You hate
I
it. Yep.
hate it. One of the most compelling things about the game storytelling of the Sarah fights is that they're such a mystery. You get to know them through small clues, murals, references to scars, and over time, based on everything that you pick up, you build this mental image of what they are, whether you believe they're a cult, whether you believe they're quite an optimistic, maybe you do actually believe in the religiousness of it all, and maybe there is a prophet who's right about all of this. Everything about the unknown is everything about the scars. And that first emergence of like Ellie coming into contact with them with that arrow shot is everything I wanted, and I don't feel like we're going to get it, and I'm really disappointed. I feel like they really shoehorn them in way too early here. I don't know. Maybe it'll pay off long term, But for me, this was such a jarring change from the games that I was like, "Ooh, I don't know how this is sitting with me. I don't like it."
Mhm.
That's my instinctive reaction.
Yeah.
How did you feel?
I definitely didn't feel as strongly as you did, mostly because it it wasn't I didn't have the timeline in my head of like when do the Seraphites pop up and how obviously you say I remember the scene of Ellie encountering them and it being very scary and being like, what is this whistling? What is happening? Like having that be my encounter, and that would be very cool to see on TV. I think in terms of world building and specifically having us know the WLF versus the Seraphites of it all, I kind of understand starting it here, specifically because Ellie and Dina are going to come across these dead Seraphites and then use that as another reason of like, these WLF people are fucked. Like, look what they did
Mhm.
to a kid. It made sense. Again, like with the world building, I understand it, but I do agree. Like, I think a more intense, fun way to introduce them is having Ellie get shot with an arrow. But in terms of setting up that there are different factions of different sorts of groups in this world, and kind of just putting a pin in that for later, I understand doing it this episode because we're episode 3 out of 7. Like, we don't have a ton of time, so it kind of makes sense to like, I'm gonna put that pin in there and then we'll save that for later. I didn't mind it as much as you did.
Yeah, I think I don't know. For me, it was just. I think they could. I think it makes sense with the overall thing. Like, I understand why they've done it because they have to tell the Abby perspective alongside this one. It's not like you can maintain this mystery halfway through and then have season 3 just be Abby's perspective. I think there would be like riots because it would be a different show almost.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
have to tell these stories concurrently. And so as part of that is perhaps the mystery of the Seraphites has to be given up. I understand it. Doesn't mean I have to like it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
didn't bother me that much, but I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And I think like you did point out earlier, like I do think in terms of theme, in terms of like the paths people are on and like why they're doing what they're doing, I think it makes sense. But yeah, take it or leave it, I guess, is where I end up coming down on this. You know,
Yeah.
it didn't
Yeah.
it didn't I was more apathetic to it, I think.
Yeah. Another thing that was Manny had a very high up perspective, and we got like kind of many of the a very open view of Seattle and its skyline. No sky bridges to be seen, which is quite curious. I wonder if those
Better
are going
give
to be
us Sky Bridges in season 3
an
because I
unfortunate
swear
cut.
to God.
They alluded to Abby's fear of heights a little bit. What with the kind of
Mhm.
like how she reacted when she fell. It was a bit much for just falling in the snow and sliding a little bit. Maybe it's because I don't know. Maybe she didn't know if there was a cliff or anything like that. But certainly, I got the vibe that they were alluding to her fear of heights, and I thought that would be a very prominent theme to include had the sky bridges been included. I think perhaps they might just be a bit more tamed down if they are included. They won't necessarily
Agree.
be the
I think if
full
they're also
skyscraper ones.
putting what's it called? If they're also like alluding or foreshadowing to something with Abby and Heights, it also could be the whole Ferris wheel thing with her and Owen. Like it
True,
may not
yes.
be the big thing we think it is, which
Mhm.
obviously we want to see the sky bridges. Like they're freaking cool. Like that would be a season 3 thing for Lev and Abby anyway.
Mhm.
But I want to see them.
I kind of do want to see them. I think maybe this might be a TV thing of just looking at the realism of it because they know that there's going to be a hell of a lot of
Just do like a
scrutiny.
green
Because one of the biggest
screen, do like a
criticisms,
CGI moment. I don't know.
I wonder if maybe the TV criticism is going to come from the fact that, like, well, what happens on a clear day when the WLF see them, and why are they not?
There aren't any
you know,
clear days in
seeing
Seattle,
them?
Stuart. That's all we need to say.
Well, tell that to this episode because we got a pretty decent one.
Yeah, that's true.
But
That was
yeah.
a rare, clean, sunny day in Seattle.
It really did
Mhm.
seem it. Of course, then we got the preview for the next episode. We're getting the music store scene. We're getting the flares. We're getting the subway. It's Seattle day one, and it's gonna be a freaking vibe. I think we're also getting Isaac very much introduced in this episode as well. I thought it was going to be a Eugene Isaac kind of blend to Firefly history, the mirroring of that information, perhaps. No, we're getting Isaac in this one, and we're getting a real establishment of who the Seraphites are, because we're going to almost certainly get that interrogation scene as well, which also lends us to think that perhaps we might get the teasing of Owen's situation, which is going to be quite interesting, and a lot more of the humanization of the Salt Lake crew. So much to look forward to. Oh, it's going to be so good.
Yeah, I can't wait for next episode. I think anyone who was like, this episode was a filler episode, it was too slow, blah, 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 blah. Next episode, hold on to your butts, okay?
Yeah.
Because we're getting the emotional stuff of the music store, the flares in the subway, which is like very intense, very chaotic, a lot of infected running around. It's going to be good. It's going to be intense. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, incredible. And also, like, you can't call it a filler episode when we talked this long about it. Like,
I know we talked longer about this one probably than the last one.
Yeah, a lot more to unpack in terms of like actual substantial things, not just trauma. Which is perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah, so take that, people.
Yeah. Gosh. But I think we have covered it exhaustively. So before we wrap things up, Jess, shall we channel some Will Livingston as we always do?
Please.
What do you think the significance of the coffee beans on Joel's grave was?
Oh, is it something with brewing? Something? Oh, is it brew? Is he can't brood over something? What is it? I don't know.
So close. It was Ellie's morning brew.
Knew it. See, I knew it had something to do with brew. Oh well, it's okay.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Close as I've got.
Bye bye.